We're out here working on doing an alternator replacement. I'm going with an upgraded unit off of a 2002 Dodge Durango with the 5.9 liter. So this is a 160 amp alternator, whereas the factory one was 117 amps. So what I've got here, I've got my battery tray removed and the battery and everything all disconnected. I've already removed the alternator and the front bracket that mounted to it. So there's a sandwich plate that comes onto the front end of here. That's already been removed. It's over on the bench. And right now I'm just working on taking this whole bracket out. There's 2 bolts back there. And then on the front here, there's 2 studs that need to be removed. These did come loose when I was taking the front sandwich bracket off. So all I'm gonna do now is loosen them back up and pull those studs out, and then this whole bracket should come out. You could grind down the body of the alternator, but if you ever have to replace it, or if I ever replace it with another one just like it, I'd rather have the Jeep already cut and ready to go for the bigger body alternator versus having to clearance a new one out. There's some long studs though. Fun to deal with those. One more. I couldn't get the old pulley off. Probably would have been easier to try and get that nut loose at least while it was still on the vehicle, when you still had the belt tight and tensioned. So it's not a huge difference diameter wise. So I'm just gonna run it for now. If I have problems, I should be able to swap one out in the future if I really need to, but I know people have left this one on just fine and not had any problems with it. Here you can kind of see the bracket. I've only really got interference kind of right in this area, and just a little bit maybe up there, but really not much to take down here. This bracket is where my big issues are. I have it there at the top bolt, and when I try and slide it on the same plane as the bottom bolts where it's going to be mounted, pretty quickly run into issues here. So I'm going to notch this plate back, probably come straight down, and then take a little more out of this kind of angle, open that up a little bit, and then looks like a little bit right up here to get that all the way over. Maybe a little bit further up too. I can maybe bend this bracket in and around just a little bit. It's kind of hard to do that stuff when it's off the vehicle though, so it stays aligned, but I think I can get away with cutting for the most of this. Got my trusty silver streak here. I'm just going to mark out kind of this area that I want to cut out. And it's pretty free form. No one's really telling me what to do, so I'm sure other people have faced this problem on forums and stuff. This is where I got this idea for this big alternator. That's a little thinner than I'd like, so maybe I'll do that last and see if I can't bend this up and get that out of the way without changing the bolt faces where it needs to bolt into. Making sure those are all flat with the alternator so I don't have any rocking issues once I go to install it. Just took the grinder this piece. Not that much. I did get a little overexcited with my grinder, it looks like. That was the notch it cut out right there. No, going this way mostly. And into here. Then I got a little too far there. Probably be alright. Looks like here. Pretty much good at the bottom. It looks like. And I do need to take a little bit. I'm gonna try and bend this actually. just bend it up. That's already on a bend. That piece has already got a jog to it. So if I could just kind of get this corner lifted up, should clear that much better. I got both brackets clearanced, at least the removable ones. Got everything lined up again. So I have clearance up here now, where I'm not hitting the case of the alternator. All of my studs and bolts still go in and out freely enough. A lot of the threads and stuff are pretty not clean. Some of these bolts are really crusty. I'll put some anti-seize on them so I can get them out in the future. I don't know if I'll order replacements or not right away. I'm gonna just make them work for now. Kind of see the fresh metal there in that corner. That's how much I took out from about here to right about the center of the screen there. Plenty of room there. I don't think I'll have any problems. And then I ended up getting this piece to bend over a little bit, just with it in the vise and hitting it with a hammer. This bracket will get a new coat of paint before it goes back on, just to kind of cover up some of that. See there, took a little bit off both of the bosses for the studs that go in there. And then I'll take a little bit more material off here, it looks like, to get it nice and level-ish. Just so it's not contacting the body here. Don't know if I'm lucky or not, or if this is why people choose this one, but it's got a nice recess here that kind of sits in that notch. The issue is right on this side of these studs, on the block itself, there are some more bosses that I'll have to shave down just a little bit. Those are the ones that give people problems. Right in the center of the screen there's two little bosses where the studs run through that I showed earlier. The face closest to us I'll have to knock down a little bit because that is on the same, or is the same size as these here, the rounds that make these up. So I'll have to make those on the block match what I have here a little bit better. I don't know if I'll get a grinder in there, and it's kind of tight with some lines and stuff, but if nothing else I think I could get a hand file in there, or from the bottom, be able to come up from the bottom and knock those down a little bit more. So this is going to be a pretty terrible install video now that I'm realizing it, but because I'm skipping a lot of steps. But I got my new alternator in, has the same connections at the rear. The post for the positive is actually a little bit larger. So under here, there's a post that sticks out. It's a little bit larger, so I did have to drill my upgraded cable to fit over that post so the nut could go down all the way on it. And then I was able to get the, I think it's the factory cover over that insulator, which fit. I had to cut a few pieces off, but to make it fit over the larger post and over the larger base and everything. But it fits on there snug and it shouldn't come off. The black wire running in the back there is the plug for the, I guess it's the negative, or it's the signal that goes to the PCM and stuff like that. There's two prongs in it and it's not very complicated. Older models had two screws that you would run the wire to. This one, the wires are routed together and then they run through a plug that plugs directly into the back of this. Didn't have to splice a new plug or anything on it, just clicked right in. It should work just fine. But there's a bracket there that runs down the front of the alternator and mounts onto the block in a couple different spots. That was kind of a pain to get figured out. I did have, you'll probably never won't see it, but right about in the middle of the screen there's the pulley for the fan, I believe. The fan and the fan clutch. That came really close to that bracket after I had modified it and bent it around a little bit. So I had to take it back off a few times and clearance it to fit and repaint it, add a couple extra layers of paint every time I did that. This one I did put in opposite of the way it came out. So this bolt was fed in through this side, and I don't see why it needed to be done that way, so I flipped it around. It just let the interferences with the fan and all that stuff. It's not gonna back itself out, I don't believe. So I think it'll be fine. But underneath here, all right, looking up from the bottom, you can see my bracket there. You can see the belt, I got the belt on. It works just fine being on the back of the pulley. The open rib is on the front, and I don't think it's gonna lead to any issues. The belt looks aligned. I'll check it when I get it started to make sure it's not gonna slip, or it doesn't need to be moved to the front of the pulley there. Getting that bracket on is kind of a pain. It kind of got warped a little bit in my modifications. So if you do this, just be careful that it's not contacting the fan pulley right up at the very top there. I probably have an 1/8 inch clearance at least, and it should never move. These two are both fixed to the motor basically, and that pulley is tight, so it's not gonna deflect at all. But got my new belt routed, got all that done, so all my bolts are in. Higher than it was before, which might be a good thing. This battery was a little undercharged, so could just be topping the battery up, but that's a good sign. The biggest symptom that I had before I replaced this was my volts would drop to about 11.5, 12 volts when I was driving, and after about 10 seconds of that, it would drop to all the way down to 9, and then my check gauges light would come on. I did check that with a multimeter on the battery. When it was running, it was only reading about 11.5 volts to the battery, which when it's running, it should be charging the battery at, I think 13.5 is what your minimum